Meghan Markle felt humiliated on Prince Harry's most recent UK trip, and that the trip turned into a nightmare, forcing Markle and her children to return home to California earlier than they had hoped.
Nullifies her claims, Harry's claims that they can't possibly return to the United Kingdom without royal security because the press won't leave them alone.
This trip to the UK, there was a bit of will they, won't they? Harry goes by himself, and then suddenly Meghan Markle with the kids in they trot as well. But there have been some reports that the family reunion that they had with the King and the Queen may have not gone as planned for Meghan. There are some suggestions that it probably wasn't warm and fuzzy. I can't imagine.
Any hope of peace between Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and King Charles at Highgrove shattered faster than expected. What looked like a genuine shot at healing the family wound spiraled into total chaos. Insiders claim Meghan fled the private Highgrove estate after just 47 minutes, barely an hour after sitting down with King Charles. Her abrupt departure stunned royal experts and the press, proving this grand peace offering had crashed and burned before it could even begin. But what really happened behind those locked doors? Those 47 minutes were far more chaotic, stressful, and painful than any tabloid headline dared to suggest. The reality of what happened has layers that completely change the way we view this royal drama. For months, speculation ran wild about whether Harry and Meghan would ever set foot in the United Kingdom again, especially with the massive battle over security costs. Since the palace refused to fund protection for their children, many assumed Meghan would never bring Archie and Lily along. This lingering tension seemed to block any hope of peace, but then out of nowhere, the entire narrative shifted.
This is the first time that the King has actually met his granddaughter and grandson from Prince Harry's side of the family since the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee all the way back in June 2022. And if you were to ask me on Monday afternoon whether I thought this meeting would take place, I would have told you absolutely no chance.
It's been reported that Markle's frustrations came from the couple not receiving taxpayer funds.
Whispers emerged that Meghan had quietly landed on British soil with the kids, not for some media circus, but solely for a private audience with the King. It was a stunner that caught everyone off guard, sparking hope that the deep family divide might finally start to close. King Charles himself seemed optimistic. His team signaled he was truly ready to mend fences and write a better chapter for his fractured family. Years had passed since the King last saw his grandchildren, and that painful absence weighed heavily on his heart. To the rest of the world, this was the ultimate opportunity for Charles to heal things with his son and cradle Archie and Lily once again. Imagine his quiet excitement, the anticipation of showing his young grandchildren the lush gardens and historic treasures of his private retreat. It had all the makings of a beautiful reunion, filled with warm embraces and lasting memories, but the reality of that meeting shattered those warm expectations. Instead of a loving homecoming, the room felt freezing and formal, resembling a cold corporate merger rather than a family reunion.
For the most part, he was rejected. And the nightmare wasn't just the trip. It was discovering that the privilege of royalty, doesn't automatically survive after you quit.
Small talk fell completely flat, smiles looked tight and strained, and any real affection was entirely missing. Everyone seemed to be reading from hidden scripts rather than speaking honestly. Those close to the situation noted that rigid boundaries remained firmly in place like invisible walls, keeping everyone isolated. The affectionate breakthrough never came, choked out by a cold protocol that left everyone isolated. A precious family moment quickly dissolved into something incredibly awkward and forced, where keeping up defenses was more important than connecting. It proved that sometimes even family can feel like total strangers. Then comes the major twist. Meghan arrived expecting a profound breakthrough built on love, mutual understanding, and forgiveness. She genuinely believed this visit would finally heal their deepest wounds, hoping to be embraced not merely as the wife of Harry, but as an essential member of the family. Instead, she was hit with a brutal reality check, a stark conversation about rigid rules and the uncompromising demands of royal duty.
Well, Meghan is furious because she hasn't done everything she wanted. When they knew they were going to come to the UK and London, she sent a list of what she wanted done for her at Buckingham Palace. Can you believe that? But they didn't go to a palace. They went to a home, and she didn't get what she wanted.
Meghan was absolutely furious, and honestly, who could blame her? She expected welcoming hugs, but instead faced a cold truth about how seamlessly the institution had moved on without them. The underlying message was undeniable. Any potential path back meant obeying strict terms with absolutely zero wiggle room. This was a far cry from the emotional healing she wanted. It was a cold warning that the future of the monarchy had no room for their terms. As Harry and Meghan pulled up to Highgrove, an estate steeped in deep royal history, the nervous tension must have been overwhelming. Harry surely hoped for a genuine, deeply warm embrace from his father after years of painful separation and mounting conflict. What he got instead was completely different. They were immediately hit with a strategic delay and instructed to wait outside. This was no accidental pause either. The air grew heavy with tension while royal aides finalized arrangements, ensuring every rule of protocol was strictly enforced before they even entered the room. That atmosphere was suffocating, a fragile mix of desperate hope and mounting anxiety.
Photograph of this meeting, given that it would enhance their brand.
This was never just a simple family reunion after some time apart. It was a collision of years of unresolved emotional baggage, mismatched expectations, and deep-seated pain that had never been addressed. Under the heavy gaze of tradition, the ultimate truth of this meeting was unmistakable. This meeting was never about reconciliation. It was a cold demonstration of how the power dynamics had permanently shifted. Harry and Meghan stepped into a reality far colder than the one they envisioned, learning that peace now required absolute surrender to strict royal terms. Before the actual meeting could happen, a mountain of rigid protocol was required. This was no casual greeting. Every single movement followed strict rules designed to show exactly who held the power. To anyone watching, the silent power play was instantly obvious. The visitors possessed absolutely zero leverage in this high-stakes situation. The air grew heavy. You could almost feel the temperature drop in the room. Tight jaws and forced smiles told the story. They struggled to mask their deeply wet of reality. Most people probably expected a warm, gracious embrace at the door, followed by a quiet, private chat with the king in some cozy, highly intimate corner. Instead, reality hit like cold water. The palace staff stuck rigidly to their own unyielding script.
The Sussexes, with their children, were able to go to Highgrove. They flew into the country. They go to Highgrove, perhaps other parts of the UK as well, and then they go back home. Does it make a mockery of their demands for 24/7 royal security, given that
They made it absolutely clear who runs Highgrove? No rules were getting bent for these high-profile guests. It was a blunt reminder that royal tradition does not bend for anyone inside those stone walls. Everything about the scene showed the palace was firmly in charge. The message was clear: visitors had to adapt to their world, and they were not about to make any exception. After just 47 short minutes, Meghan was seen leaving Highgrove. The deep disappointment written all over her face spoke louder than any words ever could. The meeting fell completely flat, leaving a trail of shattered hopes in its wake. Yet, here is the twist: reports suggest King Charles walked away feeling perfectly content with how it went. The stark contrast between Meghan's obvious distress and the king's calm demeanor left a massive question mark over what actually happened behind closed doors. After years of being apart, King Charles finally got to connect with his grandchildren again. Yet, despite all the anticipation, the reality was far colder and stiffer than anyone hoped. What should have been a deeply emotional reunion turned out quiet and strictly formal, a mere routine of politeness.
Is that she would be able to use that to her advantage, and the palace was very smart on.
The palace managed this meeting carefully. Sources close to them claimed the entire atmosphere remained highly subdued, with barely any real conversation or actual breakthroughs. Instead of sharing any warm laughter, the visit wrapped up with rehearsed, polite small talk. Not a single photo was taken, proving the reunion lacked the genuine warmth of a family. Immediately after that cold meeting wrapped up at Highgrove, Meghan slipped away with the children, keeping an extremely low profile with almost no public presence. Harry stayed behind in the United Kingdom to prepare for his beloved Invictus Games. Throughout this entire visit, Meghan avoided the public. Insiders understood her silence. She wanted absolutely no part of the public backlash waiting for her. Stepping out meant risking hostile boos and harsh reactions, something she was determined to avoid during this stressful trip. To make matters worse, reports emerged that promotional gifts tied to Meghan's brand were flatly rejected. This harsh snub hit her hard, leaving her feeling excluded once again. This single quiet gesture highlighted the painful growing distance between them. Meghan remained trapped on the outside, caught between complex family politics and public judgment, forever pushed to the margins of royal life. She had expected a much warmer reception when she first landed in the United Kingdom. After so much public drama, she likely hoped that time had finally softened the family's anger. Instead, she was met with a frosty wall, proving old wounds were still deep. The pain remained incredibly fresh within those palace walls, leaving a heavy blanket of resentment in the air. Just imagine Meghan walking into that room, fully prepared for a deep, healing conversation to finally close the painful gap that had grown over the years. Since Charles had not seen his grandkids in years, many hoped this meeting would mend things. The world watched expectantly, wishing for warm embraces and shared laughter. But the reality was quite different, and William was reportedly not happy.
I think the Queen was very happy, but I'll tell you why I think it's clever. And I thought about this overnight, because I don't know much else to do, because I don't sleep. His son has been emotionally blackmailing him and wants to deal and titles before the king passes. That's me being very straight and very honest with everybody, because there isn't a chance in hell that William will ever thaw. That's my opinion. So the king was under that sort of pressure, didn't want to be criticised for not seeing his...
The actual meeting was shockingly brief, wrapped up in less than an hour. This brief duration quickly became the focus of intense speculation. Why did they rush through it? What did that rushed encounter reveal about the true state of their relationships? For close observers of the royal family, that incredibly brief visit spoke absolute volumes. Behind the polished facade, the deep, painful issues that divided them remained entirely unresolved. Time and distance had clearly failed to bring any real sense of healing or true forgiveness. Instead, the brief encounter proved that a long, incredibly difficult road lies ahead. The tension remained thick, the wounds raw, and real reconciliation felt completely out of reach. With Highgrove behind them, rumors of what happened behind closed doors spread fast. Everyone hoped this would be the long-awaited breakthrough, the moment the family finally healed and came together. But the second cameras caught Meghan leaving, that hopeful story fell apart. There was no joy or relief on her face, none of the warmth you would expect after a reunion. Instead, onlookers saw something much heavier and deeply troubling. Disappointment and stress radiated from her. Her shoulders were rigid, her expression completely shut down. The encounter left her visibly shaken rather than comforted. Observers quickly dissected every frame, searching her posture for hidden clues. Many concluded this was no victory. It was a meeting thick with unexpressed resentment and silent, heavy tension. The anticipated smiles never came. Instead, a heavy, quiet gloom settled, leaving everyone to wonder what really happened inside Highgrove. The clearest sign that things had gone sideways was the complete absence of a family photograph. During major milestones, royal families rely on a single image to project unity and healing. This time, there was absolutely nothing. That dead silence spoke volumes, fueling endless speculation over whether any real reconciliation had actually taken place. Soon, news broke that Meghan and the children were already preparing to fly back to America. This swift departure only supercharged the rumors. Was this visit to Highgrove just a brief pit stop, rather than a new beginning? Had the expected healing failed to happen? Their hurried exit made it incredibly obvious that whatever transpired at Highgrove was far from the emotional breakthrough the public was waiting for. This chapter closed with far more questions than answers, leaving the public completely in the dark. The harsh reality behind those palace walls fell incredibly short of what Meghan had secretly hoped for. Insiders revealed King Charles was caught in an impossible position. The bitter feud between Prince Harry and Prince William was no longer quiet background noise. It dictated almost every single royal decision, overshadowing private family moments and public appearances alike.
Relationship with these grandchildren. He doesn't. They've Skyped, they've made some phone calls, but this wasn't what they wanted. They would love to be able to fix this on a family level, Meghan, but that's what the problem is here. Harry and Meghan are not interested in fixing the family. They want a professional relationship. It's about the money. It's about the association to royalty. It's about being close to power.
Worse still, a deep, unspoken hostility simmered between Prince Harry and Queen Camilla. Everyone felt the tension, adding yet another exhausting layer of stress to an already fractured family dynamic. Imagine standing in the center of that storm, a grandfather who simply wanted to spend time with his grandchildren, the literal future of the monarchy. Yet his duty to the crown and centuries of tradition meant personal desires had to take a back seat. Every choice carried heavy consequences, shifting fragile family alliances and threatening to upset an incredibly delicate balance of power. Close sources describe King Charles as walking a tightrope. One side of him desperately wanted his family healed, while the other had to protect the institution above all else. Compounding the crisis, the deep-seated rift between William and Harry remained completely unresolved, still boiling with intense resentment, hurt, and profound frustration. Then came Harry's memoir, Spare. His candid criticisms of Queen Camilla deeply wounded the palace, triggering a whole new wave of anger throughout the royal household. Caught between warring loyalties and raw emotions, the king acted with extreme caution. He tried to preserve whatever fragile bonds remained, even if it meant burying his own wishes.
Harry and the king to have sorted out their relationship, because you would expect the king to go to something like the opening of the Invictus Games next year. It would be standard, almost normal.
As the dust finally settled on what should have been a turning point, one hard truth emerged. This brief encounter exposed the deep fractures within the House of Windsor. That 47-minute meeting at Highgrove was never a simple casual family visit. It served as a stark masterclass in the heavy realities of modern royalty. When personal relationships collide with duty and public perception, hope for healing quickly fades into a grim reminder that some wounds run far too deep. The sit-down itself was about something far larger than just Meghan, Harry, and King Charles sharing a room. It was a clash of institutional power, family loyalty, and the agonizing struggle of trying to be a father while serving as the leader of a centuries-old dynasty. Every choice King Charles faced had to balance his quiet hope of hugging his grandchildren against the massive structural demands of the crown itself. It is the exact kind of suffocating pressure that keeps a man awake at night, forcing compromises that leave absolutely nobody happy. The silence behind those palace walls highlights a profound clash between what a modern family needs and what an ancient institution demands. Meghan arrived hoping for authentic warmth and emotional vulnerability. She likely envisioned raw conversations about past wounds, real apologies, and the kind of heavy honesty that repairs broken bonds. Instead, she was met with chilling formality, rigid protocols, tightly managed interactions, and polite small talk that carefully avoided every single issue that actually mattered. The king was not acting out of malice. He was shielding something far larger than his own emotional life.
Photograph. We know the world we live in. We know the world of social media. We want to see a picture of the king, of Meghan, of the children, of Harry, of everybody smiling. The palace said absolutely not. This is not a state visit. This is not even an official visit. This is a family visit. And so there's no...
The total lack of any official family photograph tells the entire story of how that day went. In an era where the royals micromanaged their public image, choosing not to publish a single photo was the ultimate statement of defeat. Pictures represent validation and proof. They are the firm's way of signaling that everything is perfectly fine. But this time, nothing emerged. No happy portrait, and absolutely no shots of the grandchildren with their grandfather. That heavy silence spoke louder than any public statement. This was no mistake or accidental oversight. It was a calculated decision to set hard boundaries. The monarchy was simply not ready to paint this visit as a triumph. That missing celebration, it spoke volumes. But to understand why things went down this way, we have to look at the massive elephant in the room. Prince William and Prince Harry are broken. It is a feud that goes far deeper than typical sibling rivalry. This was not a petty playground fight where they just need time to cool off. Their rift cuts deep into questions of loyalty, family honor, and whether Harry's exit was a betrayal or survival. You do not fix that kind of damage with one quick meeting or even a dozen of them. Both sides have to be willing to bend, and right now, neither one is budging. Then comes the Queen Camilla situation. It is a messy layer of this drama that most outsiders completely miss. Harry's raw revelations about Camilla in his book Spare were not minor complaints you can patch over with an apology. He challenged the core of royal loyalty and respect. And Camilla, she sits in a highly sensitive position. She is the queen consort, married to the king, representing a future for the monarchy that completely excludes Meghan and Harry. When Harry aired his struggles with her, he was not just venting about a difficult stepmother. He was attacking the very person the entire institution had chosen to protect. That is not resolved in a quick talk. Also, the exact timing of Meghan and Harry's arrival mattered far more than people think. They did not just wake up one morning and suddenly decide to patch things up. This was highly calculated, carefully planned, with endless back-channel talks we will never be allowed to hear. A 47-minute meeting points to intense negotiations over what was off-limits, who was allowed in the room, and the strict rules of engagement. That tight control does not build space for real healing. It is just theater, a performance of peace. And those are two very different things. The meeting proved one thing. The royals live by a completely different set of rules than the rest of us. Normal families eventually have to sit in a room and actually face their messy feelings. People snap and say what they really think. Tears flow. Voices get raised. But then something shifts because the relationship matters more than stubborn pride. The royal family cannot afford that kind of raw emotional breakdown. They need perfect polish and total control because the crown comes first. That is where this whole thing breaks down. Meghan and Harry were looking for real reconciliation, but the institution could only offer a corporate compromise. The bigger issue here is that Meghan represents a challenge the traditional palace has never had to face. A woman speaking openly about mental health, addressing institutional racism, and refusing to fake a smile when everything is falling apart. In the real world, that honesty is refreshing. But to an organization built on keeping up appearances, it is terrifying. The palace is obsessed with projecting timeless stability. Meanwhile, Meghan is all about pushing for authenticity and real change. Those are not just different styles. They are totally incompatible philosophies. Harry's position is just as complicated because he is basically caught between two worlds. He wants to honor his legacy and keep his royal ties, but he has chosen a path his family simply cannot support. Wearing that royal crown means putting handcuffs on your freedom and silencing your own voice. Harry clearly choked under those limits before he quit, and now he is suffocating under the fallout of leaving. No single meeting can fix that. It is a choice he must make every day. And honestly, what makes this saga so fascinating is that there are no clear villains. King Charles is not evil for putting the institution before his family feelings. Meghan is not wrong for demanding real honesty instead of fake polite theater. Harry is not crazy for wanting to keep his family ties while carving out a new life. Everyone is acting logically based on their own beliefs, but those core values are on a collision course. That is why a real truce is so difficult. No one is simply wrong and waiting to be taught. It is about fundamentally different worlds colliding. But we cannot ignore the giant Sussex brand question hanging over all of this. Meghan and Harry have built a massive empire, a media presence, corporate deals, and a platform reaching millions. They are no longer private citizens trying to hide from the spotlight. They are power players now. This makes the palace wonder, are they actually looking for peace, or is this just more content for their next big project? That is cynical, maybe, but understandable given how much Harry and Meghan have cashed in on their royal drama. Fair or not, that perception is real. And inside palace walls, perception is the only reality that matters. Looking ahead, this meeting was neither a start nor a finish. It was just a brief pause in the middle of a very long sentence. The story rolls on. Honestly, the next chapter will probably look identical to this: one careful distance, polite nods, and absolutely no real bridge building. That is not necessarily a tragedy. Sometimes families survive on cold politeness instead of warmth, and people learn to live with that. Maybe that is the real ending here. Not making up, just accepting that some cracks are simply too wide to bridge. This whole mess proves one thing. Even the most powerful people on earth cannot simply force a broken family back together through sheer willpower alone. Sometimes love and duty just fall short when the rot runs this deep. The monarchy itself will probably survive just fine without Meghan and Harry fully in the fold. This institution has weathered far worse storms throughout history, but the actual people, Charles, Harry, William, and Meghan, must live with the quiet ache of these choices. That is the real human toll that gets buried beneath all the gossip. This saga is far from finished. We are watching a real family struggle to survive in the modern world while weighed down by centuries of heavy tradition. That is why we cannot look away. No one knows how this ends. That is rare in a world where everything is scripted. So, if this look behind the palace gates has you hooked on the drama, hit like now. Subscribe to the channel. We are always unpacking these messy family dynamics and bringing you the truth. Pass this along to anyone who loves royal history, because talking about what really happened in those halls matters. Tell us in the comments, what do you think actually went wrong at Highgrove, and where does this broken family go from here? We will see you in the next video.